Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this tutorial we're going to look at list views in Android. So there are a few more changes that I want to make to my Note Squirrel application, but before I go ahead and make them, I want to look at a few other concepts in Android programming. So a list view is a view control that enables the user to choose between different possibilities, basically. And there's also a spinner view where you can select from a drop-down list, but a list view just displays your options right in front of you. So let's take a look at an example here, and I've got a basic application, a Hello World Android application set up here, and just a new project. And in the layout here, I'm going to create a list view. So I've got rid of the Hello World text view there that comes in there by default, and I'm just going to create a list view here. So let's just close this, and I'll give this an ID. So I'll press Control Space to autocomplete this, and once again to get the kind of @ symbol plus ID slash. And since there's only going to be one list view in this application, I'll just call this list. But of course, normally you'd want to give your list view an ID that was more descriptive of what it did in particular. Okay, so I also need to, well, let's change this to linear layout actually. And I'll make this linear layout. And a linear layout has an orientation, so I'll set the orientation here to vertical, and I'll set the layout width here to let's set it to match parent, and the layout height I'll set it to wrap content. And if you forget the layout width or layout height, when you run your program, it's probably going to say something like, unfortunately the application has stopped. And you can get to the bottom of the problem by going to DDMS or this tab here and looking at logcat and scrolling up right to the top of the red error text, and there you'll usually find something informative. Now I need to supply this list view with some items to put in it, and the simplest possible option here is just to give it a few hard-coded strings to put in it. And we'll look at some more complicated options following this tutorial. But for the moment, let's just have some hard-coded strings. So I want an array of strings that this list view will display, basically. And I'm going to go to strings.xml, which is the proper place to put any kind of string that the user might actually see. And I'll go to the kind of Eclipse view of it. And now so far we've been adding just single string values to this string.xml, but now I want to add an array of strings, and to do that, click the Add button, and I'll go to String Array here, click OK, and I'll give this a name, and I'll just call it List Options. And again, I'd normally give this something more descriptive, but this is just a sample application with one list in it, so I'll just say List Options here. And then with that selected, I'll click Add, and I'll click Item here, and I'll give this item a value. I'll give it the value Bob. I'll just give it a name for want of something to put in it. And click Add again, and let's say Sue. And whoops, actually I need to add an item first, then I can give it a name, a value actually, Sue. And let's click Add again, and have another item which I'll give the value Mike, and I'll save that, and I'll go to strings.xml. I'll go to like the raw view of this XML file, and you can see that it's added this string-array tag with a bunch of item subtags and with the name that I specified. And of course you can type that by hand if you want to. You don't have to use this kind of user interface to the strings.xml. And to get those into my list, I go to my layout here, and in this list view I say entries, and I'll autocomplete that to Android : entries. and I press Control Space again, and I need this, not the @ string as I've used before, but this time the @ array, because we're dealing with an array of strings here. And if I press Control Space again with the cursor right there, it's going to autocomplete the name of my list. And if you had multiple possible lists to autocomplete, you would see a list of possible options at that point. Now if I run this, we're already going to see my list, so I'll click Run there. And the other important thing to do with lists, of course, is you want to know when the user has clicked a particular option. And to find out what the user clicks, I need to add some code in my corresponding activity, the activity that corresponds to this layout here. So I'll add a method to put it in here. I'll create a method called set list listener, and let's implement that method. So in fact, if I click this warning icon here and just go to create method set list listener, that will create my method for me, which could save you some time. And in here, and let's just take a look at the application now it's running. So there's my list, and I can select different items in it. And now I want to add the code that will tell me which one's actually being clicked. So in here, and you sort of know the drill by now, I need to create a variable of type list view, which I'll just call list here, again since there's only one, and set that equal to the return value cast to a list view of find view by ID. And here I supply r.id dot, and in this case list, because that's the name that I gave to the list view. Right here, that's its name. And once I've got my list, I can say list dot set on item click listener. There's a lot of different kind of listeners that the autocomplete brings up here, but you need to get the right one. Don't use the on click listener. Use the on item click listener, because you want to know when an item has been clicked. And you can see that accepts a on item click listener. So I'm going to say here new on item, and I'll use the autocomplete again, on item click listener. And I'll put the semicolon in there and add any imports with Control Shift and O, and just save that, and then I'll click this error and I'll go to add unimplemented methods. There we go. And just to remind you, Control Space is the autocomplete. I use it all the time because it saves you a huge amount of time. Now the two arguments that we're going to use here are going to be this one. So I'm going to give this a sensible name. I'm going to call it adapter, because it's an adapter view, which I'll explain in just a second. And I'm going to use this one here. I think that's the one I want, which I'm going to call pos, which is short for position. Now the position here is the position in the list of the item that's clicked. So let's have some debug here. Let's say, or I could use a toast actually, that would be equally good. Let's say toast dot make text this, and the text I'll say pos, and add on the position there, and then let's add on the value. And now to get the actual value of the item from the list, well, that's let's just add some dummy quotes, empty quotes for a moment. It's not something that you perhaps usually want to do, because often what you want to do is you want to put something other than strings in this list, which we'll get onto shortly, and you want to get some kind of ID for that item, because the value in this case that we could get is the only kind of value that the items have is the actual text that each item displays, Bob, Sue or Mike in this case. And getting the actual user interface text isn't usually much use, because you want to avoid kind of having your code rely on actual text that the user sees, because you might want to change the text that the user sees, and you want your code to carry on working. So you don't normally deal with actual values, but just for fun here, let's get the actual text that the user selects by clicking. So so that's the position in the list, and in fact what it is it's the position within the items that the list of the array of items that the list is displaying. So and this adapter, what this is it's a thing that takes in this case it's taking the array of strings and it's turning them into list items. So it's adapting the strings to list items, if you like, because the actual widgets in the list are kind of list items and the things that I've supplied are strings, and this adapter class kind of translates from one to the other, and we can use that to get the actual value that the user sees by saying adapter dot, because that's the name I gave to the local variable here, adapter dot get item at position, and here I can just put in the position, which I call pos, and let's just put a semicolon on the end there. So I'll maximize that and save it. I think I did something wrong here, but I'm not quite sure what. So let's take a look at the error. Oh yeah, I need to fill in the duration for the toast. So I'll say toast.length short, and let's put show in there. And let's finally run that. And still some error here. I think that should be okay. So I've got this. Oh yeah, it's I need to put in here. I often forget this main activity.this, because here I'm in a method of an anonymous class. So this would refer to the unnamed class that this object here belongs to, and I want the enclosing object, main activity. Okay, so that looks good, and let's run this, and let's just take a look here at the console. Now if you're kind of still unclear about what this adapter is, don't worry, because we're going to cover this more in future tutorials, but as I say, basically it's just transforming a list of strings into items in the list. So let's take a look. So this is starting, and I'll take a look at my emulator here, and has it started, or are we still looking at the last one? I think it is good. Let's try clicking it. Yep, so there I go. And the value is 0 here. Did I do something wrong? I think, oh yeah, I called get item ID at position, and that's getting me an ID for the item, but what I really want is get item at position. There we go. So I want to get the item itself, and because I added strings to this list, the items will be strings. So finally, let's try running this again, and this time hopefully it should actually work. So installing, and we're going to move on to looking at how you can render the list items in the way that you like and add icons to them and things like that. But I thought I'd keep it simple for this initial tutorial. So now let's click an item, and there we've got the position is 0 in the list and the value is Bob, and you see it works for the other items too. Whoops, let's click Sue, and my toasts are kind of queuing up here. Try Bob again, and Mike, which is at position 2 because they're 0 based. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial, and we're going to take a bit more of a look at this in the next tutorial before eventually going back to our Note Squirrel application and then moving on to some even more exciting things. But that's it for now, and until next time, happy coding.